just us. You and me. The outside world doesn't exist. How does that feel?
Do you know who I am?
Yes.
Well, if bribery helps destroy people's faith in the government, you have my support.
I want you to do something for me.
I know exactly what you're capable of. We're gonna give you a chance to start with a clean slate.
You're gonna have to lie to a lot of people about who you are.
I don't have a choice.
What are you looking for?
Anything that I can use as leverage.
Okay.
It's very important that you don't tell anyone.
Who we are, where we've come from, I know.
You're beautiful.
Say it.
I'm beautiful.
You must know as well as I do that everyone can be influenced.
This is not right on so many levels.
I'm not safe.
Are they coming after me?
Yes, I have let you off the hook so many times.
Will you do something for me?
Yes.
Anything?
Yes.
I don't need anyone.
There's so much to talk about with the show. I mean, we'll just start to say that it's fucking hot. After that, let's talk about how they broke it up this season. Last season, the first season of the show, it was one story that two really great directors, Amy Seimetz and Lodge Kerrigan, did together. Now we have two separate storylines airing back to back that each of them are sort of writing, directing on their own accord, right? Do you guys know how that happened? How it shaped out that way?
Yeah, I think they will admit that they had an interesting experience with the first season writing together that they didn't necessarily want to, sort of go through again. And they felt it would be better as true auteur filmmakers in their own right that they do exactly what they do, which is make films by themselves. So having gone through that first season collaboratively, they decided it would be smart to try their own storylines. And I think
very different filmmakers.
They're very different filmmakers, and I think they're quite different stories. So, Louisa stars in Lodge's, and I star in Amy's, which is also interesting that you have a male-female director dynamic at play. When dealing with the subject of sex, I think it's interesting, just what the sort of what the gaze is.
Absolutely, and when you look at the two seasons, how did the two storylines? We'll put it that way.
Different productions.
Yeah, the two different productions. The male storyline, or the one that's directed by the man, is far more sexual than I think so far as I've gotten than the female storyline.
Yeah, I think mine would be described as more sensual. Sexual, sensual. I think that's fair to say, and I think it'll be an interesting thing for an audience to sort of to get the feedback loop and hear what the conversations are that come of that. Because I think there is very much a sort of male perspective that we're used to seeing when it comes to dealing with sex and what you expect to see on screen relative to what you don't expect to see on screen. And so Amy's take was definitely a little different, I think.
Louisa, I have to ask, I don't particularly love in conversations like this being like, what was it like shooting a sex scene, blah, blah, blah. I always feel like it veers into taking for granted what actresses do and what actors do and the whole process behind actually making something. But you go pretty far. And I have to ask, what were you expecting when you got the scripts? Were you nervous about it? And how did you end up working with a sort of male filmmaker behind the camera who was directing you and mostly another woman for all these scenes?
Right.
A lot of questions there.
Yeah, whoa. My mind is going like this. I received 5 pages of sides, and I saw a complex and strong individual. Oh, yeah. And I read interviews that Lodge had given, and I thought, that is somebody I need to work with. He is so specific, and really you can just show up, surrender to the material, and you're in good hands. And I remember at TIFF, where we had our world premiere, Steven Soderbergh said, we're gonna let our film give Lodge and Amy sort of a sandbox to play in, and what a glorious sandbox to be able to play in.
Well, that's what he had said about the first season too, which was that like I have this deal. These are two filmmakers that I absolutely love, who no one is giving money to. Let's give them a show to play. To have a sandbox
and
to play
it's
in.
an anthology series, and it's character driven, and the writing, the story, to be playing a self-serving individual who has ownership of her sexuality, and is a strong person, and then to be able to I wanted to be a part of the story about this successful girlfriend experience provider who is then finding herself falling in love for the first time. So this business transaction is now blurred, and she's going into a vulnerable place. Was really exciting to live in that kind of space. And the nudity was part of the character's job description, and I'm all about fully committing into whatever role I take on. And so that actually was not hard for me because it just came with the territory.
One of the things that I love about your storyline is as she falls in love, you sort of start to see at what point does the girlfriend experience end, and does the actual relationship and the emotions of that relationship begin? And you start to see it near the end of the second episode in both of their eyes as these sort of sexual experiences between the two of them happen. It's like, how much does this person want what she is providing right now versus how much does this person expect that she has to provide this because she's used to providing certain kinds of experiences?
Right. It's such a complex story, and the characters are so layered, and I feel like it's for an audience member, you're going to get a feast in 7 weeks. You're going to be served a feast because of everything that goes on. And then in my storyline, Lodge has the political side of things, which sort of reflects the power dynamics of the relationships that are portrayed, like and how in politics they are self-serving individuals, and the characters portrayed are very self-serving.
Yeah, it turns out that sex is complicated even when you're getting paid for it. That even when there is like a clear transaction at play, that there is still something that is messy psychologically that might be going on. And I think that's something that both the storylines and the first season is excited to explore. So it's about sex in some ways, but it's also about identity, it's about power, it's about all kinds of things that I think an audience can identify. I think the reason the first season was so successful partly is because it definitely has, it looks great, but it's also, it really, it resonates on levels that are universal. Even if this is a very specific transactional experience that these women are going through, I think most women have found themselves in some scenario similar, or whether it's being taken out for dinner, or whether there are people within marriages that feel as though there's some kind of transaction that's at play. So I think there's something in the complexity of these people that's been put on the page that will resonate for most people that are watching.
I think it also presents the first season as well as this season presents a sort of contradictory idea of the sex worker than we're used to in popular culture, which is they don't have agency. They're part of a larger human trafficking trade, whereas these two women are not. Yeah, it's not to say that doesn't exist.
Of course it does. And that's the thing that makes it tricky for me, certainly, as an actress over a period of a career to delve into this sort of territory. Because while it's material that fascinates me and always has, it had to be in the right hands and in the right way that it was told, because as we all know, it's part of this world is gross and horrible, and you don't want to glorify in any way. But that's the great thing, I think, that the girlfriend experience has figured out the balance to explore without being gratuitous necessarily, and without glorifying. It really doesn't it's not judgmental in its sort of positioning.
Well, I also think that we see in the first episode of I don't really want to give too much away for audience members, but we see a sense of revenge and agency in the line for which your character sort of will cross because it's her job, but doesn't necessarily like to cross, and how she views that misogyny can still sort of really play a part in this experience that she presents to men.
Right. And also, I think the show, too, shows humans making choices and then and going for it, and then you also see the consequences of those choices, and you know, it's a very you're confronted with, in this world, that like you are really confronted with raw emotion and people dealing with high stakes, and I think we as humans are fascinated by seeing other humans having to deal with these certain circumstances. So
we're fascinated with humans dealing with the highest stakes possible all the time. That is why like true crime shows are like the most successful thing in this country. There's some amazing casting in both of yours shows. It's the same show. I'm so sorry, but like. And both of your girlfriend experiences.
2 for 1, 2 for 1.
But one of the casting is, you know, deeply one of my favorite filmmakers of all time is Harmony Korine, who gets to be in, who's playing a completely different character than he's ever put himself in his own movies or other people's movies. But kind of similar, I guess. He seems like he might be sleazy. What was it like working with Harmony Korine?
That was a treat. I didn't know what to expect, to be honest, and he came in quite late. He's really a great actor. I had no idea, to be honest. And he has he's so liberated in himself and so fearless, and he demands to be confronted. He demands to be pushed. He wants new territory to play in, which is just fertile ground to work against. You know,
can I ask, how does that, like, can you give an example of like how that plays out?
Yeah, I mean, some of the scenes, they weren't so much improvised, but just, you know, a scene on a page can look as though it has a very clear arc and a very clear shape to it. But then if you get somebody that has an open enough sort of mind and approach to the art form, they will find a whole other subversive way looking at that material. And he was always looking for that. We may end up back at the place that was the sort of conventional arc, but he was really always excited and willing to sort of go into this sort of strange, you know, route first. And that doesn't always happen. You'd presume it does, because we're all creative and that's what we do, but I don't know, maybe it's... You
also have timelines, and as actors, you're always at the service of the storyteller
yeah,
and the director.
exactly.
So like, if you're not willing to sort of, or like, I mean, he started from a place at like 17 of subverting all these norms. So like for the rest of actors who are like, what do you need me to do? How do we get where you want to be?
He's not conformist in any way. So he's not going to sort of step into line as to what, you know, I think as an actor, you do get used to sort of being paid to do what you're told to do in some regard. I tend to not be that person either, so it's great when you come across someone that is equally willing to sort of rise to the challenge of finding new spaces to inhabit, and he's very much that person.
And Louisa, talk about your co-star, the woman that you are, excuse me for forgetting her name right now.
Anna Friel.
Anna Friel, yeah. She's amazing, but talk about working with her and sort of blocking these scenes out that the two of you have.
Yeah, I think we kept a...
Sorry, it's my nice way of being like, you guys...
Yeah, no, I mean, she's great. I think we kept like an element of humor about the whole thing. Because why not? So yeah, and it was really fun to just see her, you know, zero in and just, you know, she plays a really intense. I mean, I think we're all pretty intense on the show. I don't know, but yeah, and it's really funny because she's playing an American and she's coming to us from across the pond, so it'd be really crazy to hear her all of a sudden go into her accent and, you know, ask me some personal questions about my life in her accent, and I'd be like, whoa, wait a minute. But yeah, I mean, I admire her. I mean, I would love to, you know, go to a foreign country and play a native. I mean, you know, that's just completely admirable.
Well, did you guys do any research about like the girlfriend experience or the kind of things that women and men provide in the experiences and the sort of upscale call service?
I found myself doing more research post the experience. I've become more fascinated. Yeah, but that's completely separate. No, I actually
I'm gonna try this out.
I actually find that there are people in my life, when I actually looked closely enough, that are already in girlfriend experiences, even though they're not necessarily like legitimately getting paid for it. So, you know, friends who are like being taken away all the time on foreign trips, and you know, and or people, as I said earlier, you know, that are married, but it's a marriage of convenience where, you know, the woman's taken care of. You know, there are so many scenarios that if you look around yourself closely enough, the research is right in front of you. You know, it's actually right there to sort of tap into.
Well, everybody provides, whether it's a sort of marriage of convenience like you're describing, or even just sort of a marriage of love. Like when you have someone that, you know, oh, this person needs this tonight, I will provide this experience for them because it will make them, they're feeling down, it'll make them happy. So I will be some sort of doting, candle-lighting, dinner-making, you know, husband that maybe I would rather sit and watch a horror movie or something tonight, but I'll be a decent person. Right. You know, everybody provides that kind of experience at times.
Yeah, and again, I think that's what makes this stuff so fascinating for people to like watch when it gets to this sort of extreme level, because it's sort of, you know, it's the most sort of heightened version of what I think we all go through on some more diluted level anyway, at some point in our lives.
No, the series airs, the both of them air back to back, right? What night do they air?
Sunday. This coming Sunday, November 5th.
Can we expect the storylines to sort of blend at any point or cross over, or do they stay?
They stay separate, but I think you'll see...
Thematically.
But yeah, thematic, but there are moments, and like, you know, even in the trailer, you can see that there are just sort of beats that suggest that there are sort of commonalities that, you know, that both these women...
I can't wait to see the rest of hers. I've only seen 2 of her episodes, so...
Do you guys have any jealousy of each other's episodes? Like when you watch it, like, oh, I wish I could have done that and done that. Like either of you do that?
I think it's more like rah, rah, siskumba.
Yeah.
like, yeah, you did, like, yeah.
They're very different. I mean, they really are very different tonally, and I'm excited to like just to see what the reaction is for very different reasons. I think, you know, in some ways my show is more restrained in certain areas, your show is more restrained in certain areas, and you know what that provides for an audience in terms of food for thought. I think it will be intriguing. I love the fact that this is so complicated that it's going to spark, as did the first season, real conversation as opposed to sort of snippety, soundbitey sort of moments in an interview with you, for example. You know, I feel like there's something to get into.
Oh, okay. No, we are getting okay.
No, this is not the soundbite version. This is like, I feel like there's something to get into, like because we're really delving deep in a way that sometimes you don't get to do with this sort of subject matter. You feel like you have to sort of, you know, toe a certain line.
You're also presenting the story of normally objectified women who have sexual agency over themselves in a specific time right now, which is, I think, I wouldn't necessarily say a complicated time, I would say a watershed moment in media and in entertainment in regards to how women, and we're seeing young men, are objectified within not just the entertainment industry, but across all industries. What does it feel like to be presenting this kind of story at that time?
I'm so excited about my story in particular. Speaking of myself, you know, my story deals exactly with this area that I think you're alluding to, and in terms of, you know, how one can sort of retain a sense of sexuality and a sense of like ownership of what you want to be as a woman in the world without it being taken advantage of and being exploited. And I think that's very much what my storyline tackles, which we didn't necessarily see coming. Like, it's really become very zeitgeist in this moment in time. But I'm very excited about that because, as I agree, I think it's a watershed moment, and I think we're finally having a conversation in an arena that has sort of been long overdue.
Louisa, what about you and your series?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I took on the job was because I saw a strong individual, and there's no way I would want to do nudity unless it completely makes sense. And yeah, I do think that now is the time. It's a catalyst for change, and I admire all the women who have come forward, and I think that the women that are portrayed in our show are empowered and yeah, admirable. And so it was really gratifying to take on that kind of a human.
My character isn't always admirable. she's kind of, you know, at times she makes some really bad choices.
Yeah, mine too. But I mean, like, ultimately, like, in, like, individual strength.
But that's, I think, where the power lies, is recognizing that we aren't just superheroes, and we aren't just weak, and we're messy, and we're complicated, and we're somewhere in the middle most of the time. And part of that is also how we choose to explore our own sexuality. And that's the thing that doesn't get given permission to do for so many women, that we don't get the permission to explore sexuality in whatever messy way we want that to look like. And that's, I think, part of the success of the show, is that it is exploring what it looks like when women do decide to go down that path.
Well, one of the things in your series so far is that it seems like the beau, excuse me, that you're pursuing or is pursuing you may not be interested in what we even normally consider sexuality. That his version of what turns him on and what gets him off is a kind of manipulating of intimacy and what we consider intimacy.
Sex is so often like the smallest part of, you know, of it's often the chase, it's often, as you said, it's the manipulation, it's the power play, it's all of those things that sex is just sort of one outlet of. And that, I think you're right, is more so what the show is about than really, you know, what's going on between the sheets in some ways.
Let's get some questions from the audience. Who has a question? So you have a microphone, so that means you have a right here.
Hi. You both come from like very iconic backgrounds. You were on Broadway and you were in these like really great films. How is it to have this experience now to play like this really sexy role and kind of like this beautiful woman who has control but is also super sensual? Is it really fun, and which character do you usually prefer to play?
I want to take on like any sort of representation of life because I just love humans so much, and I think this was I mean, what a treat to be able to be a part of this kind of television, because it's a new thing for television to do these two different productions, and the filmmaker that I got to work with is so brilliant and so specific, and it was really a luxury for me to get 7 scripts ahead of time. I could show up prepared. It was fast moving, but you know, I knew I was in the best hands, and I love the story that's being told. So it was a real treat, and I just want to continue to do stuff that excites me, and this kind of art really makes you feel something in your gut, and that's like that's all I want to do. I want to affect people, yeah.
So I have been working in this industry for many years, and I've sort of avoided material that was overly sexual, because to be objectified too early in this career can be a death. You know, it can be the death of a long career. So in some ways, for me to tackle this sort of material now has been like a really interesting gift. And I actually think to tackle this material now with a female director, it just feels so much richer than if I was doing it when I was 20, 25. So for me, it's been a real exciting sort of departure from what I've maybe done before in some ways. But what's familiar is that, you know, again, it's a woman that is complicated, that has nuance, that has messiness about them. That's the kind of woman I'm always drawn to play, whether she's got her clothes on or not.
Next question.
Hi. So I know that the first movie starred a porn star. And did you guys go over the first movie at all, or the previous season, to like get an idea of what the show was going to be like, or did you try to avoid that?
Her name was Sasha Grey.
Yeah, good old Sasha. So I did check out the film because this first season hadn't come out when we started myself and Amy started talking about what we wanted to do for the second season. What was really interesting to me about the movie was that there were all kinds of expectations, given that it was a porn star that was in the lead, and then there was no sex, right? Or it was sex, as you described, where it's like it's often about something completely different than actual copulation, right?
I remember watching that movie when it first came out, and me and my friends who actually like art film and were excited about it as an art film were still going, where's the sex?
Yeah.
What's going on here? But it's a beautiful, cold, austere Soderbergh experiment. Like I love that movie.
And in some ways, akin to mine in some ways, it maybe gets you thinking even more sort of deeply about sex for lack of it, you know, for not seeing it sort of right in front of you. You really have to sort of understand what's going on, why these people are coming together psychologically. So I was curious and keen to see that in the movie relative to what we did for my show.
But the movie is still just such a jumping off point for what they did in the first season and for what they're doing in both of your shows, right? I mean, I imagine at no point were Lodge or Amy referencing anything from the original movie, right?
Definitely not by the second season. I think the first a little bit, perhaps, but by the second season, in terms that it's an origin story in the first season, and you get that feel that you're really getting, a sense of what that world looks like and who, you're really introduced to the character in that way. I don't think there's anything so origin story about ours. I think.
No, yeah, it all branches out and it like broadens the. I mean, I again at the when we were at Toronto at the film festival, it was the first time I had seen her episodes, and I turned to Carmen. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like this year the girlfriends are having their own major experiences themselves, like witness protection, and then my character's falling in love, and I think that they really meant for each season and each installation to really stand on its own. And yeah, I remember I watched both the film in the first season, and I thought, wow, this is fearless, provocative, and this is the kind of this is great.
I agree. It is fearless and provocative, and I think what is so fearless and provocative is that both the directors ride this very interesting line of not being exploitative while at the same time being extremely sexy. Like, they're in no way afraid of being extremely sexy and erotic at times, but they ride this interesting line of never crossing into gratuitousness or feeling like anyone is being overly objectified or exploited on screen. I think it's really smart, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
They're really great stories. Yeah. It's like, and you're watching individuals, and it's, yeah, I mean, it's completely relatable, but it's also like this incredible piece of art that's so layered.
Yeah, Amy isn't. There's nothing about her that's sort of scared of sex, and apparently not for Lodge either. And so, and I think Amy's she's a feminist. She has, I think, the right sort of substance to tell this, to sort of enter into this material with fully open eyes as to what the sort of three-dimensional sort of potential of the material is, without shying away from aspects of it. She's not, she's not afraid of, scaring anyone or upsetting anyone. And the other cool thing about the way that they approached the deal, even with Starz, which is very interesting, is that they, and Soderbergh talks about this, they went in and said, what is the cheapest that we can make this so that we have full creative license, so that, you guys do your thing and we do our thing over here creatively. And that's been like a recipe for just, I think, real art on camera, because it means that we don't feel the pressure of any sort of third parties coming in and saying it has to look this way or that way. It really is the vision of Amy and Lodge that is presented ultimately on screen. They have the whole thing edited in their heads before we even show up. They are so clear-minded of what their intention is. And so when you have directors and auteurs that are that sort of specific, it's probably going to be an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, and it's also not, they're not commenting on any sort of cross-section of society. The show is just unapologetically what it is.
I think we have time for one more question right here.
Hi. So I was wondering, getting to play your characters, does it feel like you're playing like two different sides of the same, person? And what did you guys enjoy about playing your characters?
I mean, I think there's more than two sides to my character. She's really super complicated. And part of, what is interesting in playing, I would imagine, for both of us, is that there is a sort of role play aspect. And then the show also explores what these women choose to be or who they think they might be outside of that role play. And then where does that intersect? Where is it muddy even for them? Where do they have real sort of clarity or license over their own identity? Where is it like projected by others? Which I think my storyline really delves into, like how male influence from all angles keeps coming in and trying to sort of like define who this woman is. So yeah, That's
so interesting. I never, for some reason, I didn't think of it that way. Probably because I'm not smart. But the idea of the probation officer defining who she is, the new guy who's because he is really defining who she has to be and who she should be.
Absolutely.
And it's this idea of a mother. Like he is sort of defining her, shaping her into this sort of idea that we have of women. This classical
absolutely
idea.
right. That's when you really start getting into my storyline, which is quite, it's very specific what Amy wrote. It's absolutely getting into that territory. It's about identity. It's about how women have to sort of work against or work with or sort of appease male expectations constantly. And again, that's why this is a really interesting moment for that storyline to be sort of on television, because there is so much parallel with what's happening in our industry, where women, we have our own expectations of what our careers can look like, but we're always having to sort of get permission from somebody, some other powerful male figure typically, to find our way into that. And so yeah, I'm excited. I think our story is really special right now.
Yeah, I love the show. Congratulations. Premieres this Sunday night. What time? They're back to back, right?
Does it say on
9
there?
o'clock.
9 o'clock. Yeah, just watch Starz all day, all night, and finally, and eventually, you'll get to it. Guys, give a round of applause to Louisa Krause and Carmen Ejogo.